Good afternoon. This is the third class of the discipline of high impact papers. We are going to see today some papers about how to write every part of the paper, and then we are going to see some tools to improve the writing of papers, like collaborative software and platforms and other things. Okay. I'm gonna open with the other one. Okay. So, first part, how we get to start to write a good paper. We are gonna read one paragraph for each person who starts. Okay. Who? What you should.
How to start writing on the paper and to remain motivated during the process.
Okay.
Every writer experiences good and bad writing days. There are, however, many possibilities to make the writing generally more efficient and also more fun.
Okay. The first thing to write a good paper is to read a lot. You already know that. So if you didn't read that 300 papers and master dissertations and doctoral thesis, you are not going to write a good paper or a good dissertation or a good thesis at all. So I strongly recommend that you download 100 papers from Cielo, 100 papers from Periódicos Capes, and 100 theses and dissertations from IBICT. Okay, so let's go on. The order of the writing process doesn't have to be the same as the eventual order of the article sections, and you may find some sections easier to write than others. Before writing, you have to read these 300 papers and other texts, and then you have to summarize that within a single big file, and then you have to categorize information, just like Bardin and Meiring and other authors show how to do. Categorize is like organizing your closet. You organize your blouses together, your pants together, and everything that is similar together, just that. So you are ordering information in finding the similarity between information. Okay. Before actually starting to write a paper, it is absolutely vital that the first author, as well as the main collaborators on the paper, have a clear, shared understanding of the primary research objective and key findings of this paper. So in the summary of the papers, you have to put on the file, on the big file, the key findings and some authors that always appear in all the papers and texts. Okay. So I used to say that the 5W and 1H technique is better suited to put this vital information in your big file. So what is your concept about? Where your concept was developed, and why this area of study is important. All that big questions will lead you to the most important categories. Okay. Okay. Before wondering how to start, think about when and where you are most serene, creative, and productive in writing. Sometimes you are going to find out that the best environment to write your texts are not the best environments that everything find good. So for me, I like to be in a big room with no noise at all. I don't like to write in a desk and a chair. I prefer a sleeping net and a notebook in my lap. And so sometimes you find another ways. So I found out that this way my legs don't get sore, and another set of important things. So sometimes you have to find a place in your house away from the kids and away from the husband and etc. Sometimes you have to find a way to concentrate inside a big noisy redaction, just like the journalists do, and every one has to find a way to get focused and right. Okay. Okay, split the thinking from the writing. Structure your complete storyline before actually writing full sentences and paragraphs. So you are going to first make some outlining, and then after you elaborating all the outlining, that you are going to really write full sentences and full paragraphs. So if you are thinking that you are going to write and everything is going to be read in the first time, it's not going to be that way, okay? So you build a skeleton first, and then you build a full text. So one tip is like you are going to outline your paper just like the topics of a PowerPoint presentation. First, you write these topics, and then you are going to develop the full text, okay? So you are going to gather key publications related to your paper, some seminal papers. Okay. Replace the notes with rough sentences to build a paragraph. The author says that 6 to 8 sentences is good to write a paragraph. So, but he does not comply to these directions. He himself writes paragraphs with at most 3 sentences each. So I found out that 3 sentences each paragraph is a better format to your writing. Okay, so I always when I correct papers for disciplines and for journals too, I always try to recommend that people phrase sentences within 3 lines each, and each paragraph has to be at most 10 lines long. So your paper doesn't get boring because very long paragraphs, and your sentences don't get the meaning lost in the middle because of the very long size of them. Okay. Rewrite the sentences until the whole paragraph reads well. The readability technique is about dividing the sentences in a good way and divide paragraphs in a good way. Check whether the paragraph has a head and a tail. You have to check each paragraph with a core of meaning inside the first sentence, and in the last sentence you have to see if you have a bridge to the next paragraph, and in each section and each chapter you have to check that too. So each section you have to start with a paragraph to introduce the whole thing, and the section has to end with a synthesis of what is the content of the last section and how this section is related to the next one. Okay, it's worth doing that to chapters and sections too. Okay, create empty tables and figures right at the beginning. So you are going to create the the labels of the columns in the table without the data, because when you finish the paper, the outline, the skeleton of the paper, you are going to see if that table is really relevant or not. So before starting putting data in that table, you have to find out if that information is really worth or not. Okay, keep up your motivation by planning writing sessions into your calendar. Each seat has to be 2 hours long at least, okay? And dividing the writing of paper into manageable chunks, which can be achieved during one session. So in one session, I try to write at least one page. If I don't write one page at least in one seat, that seat weren't worthy at all. So if you are going to write a 15-page paper, you have to sit 15 times, 2 hours long each, and write one page each time you sit. Okay? It's like a kind of discipline. Sometimes when I was writing at the master degree, I wrote just one paragraph, and then the next day the amount of the text that you had to write is very, very long. So if you write one page at a time, you can write more, and you get a rhythm of working that is feasible. Okay, checklist. Set aside time for writing and choose the optimal environment. Make your family understand that it's important. You're not getting walky or anything. Split the thinking from the writing. Structure your complete storyline and create empty tables figures before actually writing full sentences and paragraphs. You have to choose a potential or some 3 or 5 potentials journal early. Ahead of writing, you have to choose some papers that you are going to publish in that time or along your career, because each journal has a format of submitting papers. So you have to choose first, so you don't get a paper and then you adequate that paper to that journal. You just write to that paper earlier. Divide the writing of a paper into manageable chunks, 1 page each, for example, or introduction, and then justification, and etc. Make use of writing sessions and sufficient short and long breaks. Reward yourself for achieving intermediate and long-term goals. So when I was at the finishing line of the doctoral thesis, the writing was becoming very difficult, and the motivation was going out by the window, and etc. So every page that I wrote, I went out a little and got a snack. So you try to motivate yourself by taking a walk with your dog. The downside of this is that I got a little fatter at the process, but the work was done, and people from the final exam, my defense were very happy with that and started saying that it was very worth the work. Okay. So let's go to the second one. How to choose your title and abstract. Okay. What you should know. The title and abstract are the most important parts of the paper. So you have to choose your title, putting first the main concept of your whole study. Okay. So if you are going to put if you instead put your concept at the end of the title, you end up with underestimating your concept that you are using to study that question. So you put first the concept and then the local, the city, and the sector that you are going to approach in your study. Next, the author instructions of your chosen journal give information on requirements for titles. In this area that is epidemiology, it's very common to have these norms of submission. But in social sciences, that norms are not very common. So a tip that I'm giving is that you put your concept first and place of study and sector last. Okay. It's like Foucault says, first things first. So if the important information can come first and the less important information come last. Journals usually require a structured abstract with headings such as background, methods, results, and discussion. Some papers don't require that the abstract come in separate paragraphs. Some papers just say that your abstract have to be 150 words long or a little more. So these paragraphs, background, methods, results, and discussion are a good guide of what you have to have in your abstract in order to transmit good information about how your paper is structured. In some seminars and congress, they don't require you to submit a whole paper. You have only to submit expanded abstract. So if your extended abstract goes through the process and is approved, you end up having to write a whole paper yet. So I don't know if your style, but if it's your style or not, but there is this mode of publishing too. Okay, some checklist. Construct title and abstract from keywords from all sections of the main text. I don't know if all sections, but the concept, the local, and the place and the sector are very important things. Use important keywords at the beginning of the title. This is important. Avoid abbreviations and passive voice, title and abstract. So if you speak in a direct voice, the text becomes more fluid, becomes more flowing. The thoughts become more flowing that way. Always state the objective and start the result section with the answer to the research question. So you state the objective and then the answer to that one objective, so that you don't give a prolix text. Give sample size if you report percentages. If you report absolute numbers, you don't have to put a sample size as a really important thing. But the normal format is giving sample size and report percentages. Present effect size with confidence intervals. So effect size is like, is there a difference in the mean? Is there a difference in the standard deviation? Is there a difference in the chi-square test? And there are very many tests in statistics. So the results of the tests are the effect size, okay? So you have to present the results of the statistic tests with confidence intervals. And that big questions of 5W and 1H, some of that appeared here too. So background, what is known and why is this study needed? What did you do? What did you find? What does it mean? Another one, check that the abstract can be read independently from the main text. So if you are going, for example, to submit a paper, extended abstract to an encounter, congress, or etc., if your abstract can't be read independently, it's not going to be approved for that congress, okay? You have to pass through all the sections of your work, the objectives, why is your paper important, and what are the principal authors of your work, and then what are the main findings, and what are the main consequences for the whole people that are going to read your paper. Just like the community of researchers, the community of the city in general, and the professionals of that field, okay? Revise every time the main text is revised. Okay, so the author is saying that each time that you are going to make a review of the text, you have to see if the title and the abstract are connected, are representing the whole content of the paper. What you should do: take time to write the title and abstract. I usually write the title and abstract less in the work. I don't write earlier, unless I am submitting this paper to a congress that requires only the extended abstract. Use the keywords of each section of the paper to construct the abstract. Okay. Each section of the paper has to be represented in your abstract. The results section is the most important part of the abstract. Once the abstract is completed, it helps to ask yourself 4 questions, each relating to one section. That questions from the 5W and 1H, okay? So the second paper is over. The third paper is how to write a good introduction. Today, many editors and reviewers of empirical papers prefer short and focused introductions. So it's like making a funnel, the author says in the second paragraph. So the broadest part of the talk represents the general context of the study topic. It then narrows down to more topical contextual information, ending with the specific rationale of the study and vitally the aim, purpose of or objective. The introduction does not have a set of maximum word count like the abstract, but should be as concise as possible, typically not more than 10 or 15% of the full word count of the paper. So if your paper is going to be 15 pages long, your introduction has to be 1 page. Okay? So you are going to start talking about the whole situation of that contextualize your problem in the world, then in Brazil, next in Tocantins, in our case, and then in Palmas. Next, after you are talking the whole situation in Palmas, you are going to focus in that sector or organization that you are going to study. So you start broad and end up little. Okay. Usually the introduction of the paper ends up with the objective or with the problem, the research question that is guiding your whole process, your whole study. Ask yourself if you are happy with the outline, the skeleton of the paper. So the introduction must not be a full review of the whole field you are researching, because this full review has to be in your literature review section. It doesn't have to be in your introduction. The introduction is just like the trailer of a movie. You have to catch the attention of the reader with some important information, but not the whole set of information that there is in the field. You can present some information that it's not in the academical papers, like in IBGE and INPE and another IPEA and another institutes that are concerned with information that it is relevant to your study too. Other sources of important information are some observatories, like thanks. Just like the violence observatory, the gender observatory, and there are many observatories around the world, and another non-profit organizations that are concerned with social control of some concepts. We have some corruption observatories too, and so on. Okay? This kind of information is useful to your introduction, not very much to your literature review. Use clear, clean, and unemotional language. This is important for this area that it's in epidemiology. Okay? If you are in the education field, or if you are in the anthropology field, sometimes this directive is not very often followed. So you have to see if people are politically engaged, or are a little emotional or a little imaginative in that area, and if this is allowed in that area, you can follow that stream that is followed in that area. Okay, checklist. Check if the introduction has a funnel shape. This funnel has to have some topics, just like general background, what is noun and what is unknown in that subject. It has to end up with a primary research question, and you have to state a study aim and design. The length of the introduction can't pass 15% of the whole paper. I suggest that each section has each little section, like introduction and the references at the end of the paper, the concluding remarks at the end of the paper too, each to have 10% of the total of the paper. So you have the big parts left to the literature review, and half to the literature review, and the other half to the results of your paper. Okay. The methodology can be this 10% long or a little bigger if you want to. Determine if the introduction is the start of the storyline. And you have to see if the introduction, the way that it was written, will sell this paper to the readers and reviewers and other people. Okay. Fourth. The method section. If you consider research study as a delicate dish of knowledge, just like baking a cake recipe, okay? A paper's method section would be like a recipe that lists all the necessary ingredients of the study and how they need to be combined during cooking. So the methods is the procedure part of the cake recipe. The method section of a paper presenting original research from a quantitative study has 4 basic elements: study design, setting and subjects, data collection, and data analysis. So you are going to present how you are going to do your study, the study design. The setting is the locus of research. The subjects, they are the interviewed people or the respondent from the survey, and you have to detail very much if they are students, if they are professors, if they are teachers, if they are managers, and so on. So in your subject description, you have to say how many of each profile you are interviewing or making them respond your survey. And the data collection, it includes how long the data collection were how long was the data collection, and the period in terms of which month the data was collected. And then the data analysis, you are going to say if you used Péchet, if you used Foucault, if you used Bardin, if you used Mering, or any authors that give directions to how to do a good categorizing or other form of analysis process. Okay. Again, the author says that you have to develop a skeleton. Okay, the design. At the design, you have to say if it's a prospective or retrospective cohort study. If you are doing a study case, if you are doing experiment control, if you are doing a cross-sectional survey that studies a concept along many profiles inside the population. So all these things have to be in your method section. You have to explain too, I already said, when and where the study was conducted. And okay, if there was some criteria to exclude some subjects from your research, you have to say that. And if there are people that could not participate in your research, you have to say that too, the reasons that led people to not participate in your study. Another checklist is given. So in the method section, you have to include basic information on study design and so on. If you are going to use some scale, survey, or interview plot that is from another study or is compiled from several studies, you have to cite that several studies or that one study in this section. Okay. So this is a Popperian advice. Karl Popper. Karl Popper said that your study has to be replicable and refutable. Okay, so this directive, would a researcher be able to reproduce the study with the information I provide in this paper, is a Popperian advice. So if another researcher reading your methods can replicate that study in his own city, your methods are constructed in a good way. If your methods are not detailed enough, the methods have to be rewritten. Okay. With regard to the data collection, define precisely what exposure, stressful life event or intervention investigated, what outcomes you measured, how you measured, and when measurements were made. So this is a little specific, the examples were specific to epidemiology and medicine area, but in general, you have to say in which way you got to measure your concept, measure or describe your concept. So if it were used interview questions or if you surveyed people, or if you tried to analyze documents from several sources, just like websites and public archives and etc. All that has to be in the methods section. Okay. So the methods section is done.